I like to see a quick moving game. If there's the odd knock on here and there, who really cares? If as long as the good game's a quick game. If someone's a little bit more dominant, I like to probably give too much to the weaker side. Try and level it up a bit. Again, try and create a better game, and that doesn't bode well for a referee at all.
Hello amateurs, welcome to episode 27 of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some boisterous rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host Tim, and today I'm in Quilatoa, Ecuador, where there is a famous 3-day hiking loop that I'm about to enjoy. If you want to keep up with my travels, then give my Instagram a follow at tonics_world_tour, and I've linked that in the show notes below. I've had some tremendous feedback about last week's episode with the magnificent Lynn Evans. Nick Wilkinson tweeted, "A great podcast, highly recommended. Hashtag the legend that is Lynn Evans." And there's fireworks going off behind me here to even accentuate that fact. Thanks Nick, and thanks everyone else for your tweets and emails. Lynn's episode has proven to be one of the most popular so far, so if you haven't listened to it yet, well, you know what to do. But my guest this week is mover and shaker Bill Blythe. Blythe and I met at Old Colfians a good few years ago now. He was a latecomer to our sport, but has since immersed himself as a player, captain, sponsor, committee man and coach. This interview was recorded in January of 2020, and we discussed what it was like for him to break into the game as an adult, rugby cultures around the world, participation numbers in the modern game, and some great tips about how to build a positive rugby culture when coaching kids. There's a whole lot of value in this absorbing chat, so please welcome Bill Blythe.
Bill Blythe, welcome to the Amateur Rugby Podcast.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for having me here in your lovely house in Sidcup. Bill, we met at Old Colfians Rugby Club.
We did.
Give or take. And I'm just interested in how you first got into the game.
Yeah, so not like many other people, actually. I think it was probably a bit different. So I never played it at school, which was a real shame. I went to school in the East End. The PE teachers, they were great influences on my life. However, there just wasn't really any interest in them teaching us rugby. So we were a half decent football side and quite a good cricket side as well. So played a fairly decent level there, but I think we only had one game of rugby ever at school, and that resembled, like when you see those pictures in the sort of 1800s where you've got 300 kids running after a football in the mud. It was a bit
more of a wide game than a game of rugby.
Exactly, that spanned probably about 5 or 6 pitches and involved punching people. But that was my. So I didn't really have much experience until I went to work in the city, and I met a guy called Neil Baker, aka ABB, Andy Baker's brother, and he kind of said, well, look, you're kind of a pretty big guy. Have you ever thought about playing rugby? And I was like, well, not really. So he said, look, why don't you come down to Old Colfians? And my first ever game of rugby was playing for Old Colfians 2s against Barnes away, actually.
Oh, lovely. Nice little trip. Huh?
Yeah, indeed. And it was playing, I think Andy Gardner was captain, and playing with players like Ben Hyder and Peter Cheek. And I think I got on the last 20 minutes, didn't know anything. I had no idea what I was doing, but caught the ball, ran towards a sort of huddle of players and got immediately punched in the face by their second row. So, and I must say, at that point, I thought, actually, this is quite a game for me. Actually, I think this is
getting punched in the face was what you're after on a Saturday afternoon.
And then obviously the beers afterwards, and the slow sort of journey back through London was fantastic. And then sort of progressed from there. Obviously playing for like Nick Evans and his kind of pseudo vet side for a couple of seasons, which was really good, and played with some sort of more experienced players there, which was really fun. And then just kind of during that game, sort of during that period, my son, he was kind of getting towards 5 or 6. He was starting to play at school, and kind of started getting involved in helping running those sides, and got more involved in the minis and the juniors rugby quite a lot, which is fantastic, and went on some many really good tours across France and Wales and Scotland, which was fantastic. And then and just kind of got more and more into the game really. And started playing obviously for the very different sides, the 3s, the 2s, a couple of appearances for the 1s as well, and then.
And how did you find learning the game? But what age were you when you first played?
I think I was around about 27, 28.
Okay, which is really late for a first ever game of rugby.
Yeah, it was. Really late. And I felt it was quite difficult, really. And I felt it was quite interested trying to integrate into a rugby club where I didn't really know anyone. And obviously, sort of being, a lot of the players are sort of growing up through school. There was various different, dare I say it, cliques within the club, and sort of trying to break into them was pretty hard. Yeah,
some of the friendship groups can be tight within rugby clubs. It is an issue for some clubs for sure.
Yeah, and I must say, I'm obviously still heavily involved in Old Colfians, and it's one of the things I try and really heavily break down if I ever see that happening. And luckily, we're a club where we don't really have such sort of independent groups per se, but I do think trying to include people is massive, because I know that I felt it quite sort of difficult and strange being 28 years old, and so for example, one of the worst games I think I ever played in was we were playing one of our local rivals, and for whatever reason I was playing, I think it might have been the 4th side, and it was quite a really tight game, and I didn't get on the pitch, so I was a sub, but I didn't get on.
Yeah.
And we won the game by about 1 or 2 points. Everyone was really jubilant. Everyone was going crackers afterwards. And I just didn't feel any part of that game. And I remember thinking, you know what, screw this type thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, actually, if I feel that at almost at the age of 30, what must a younger kid feel like, who perhaps isn't as brazen as probably I was. So that's why I say, even now, and I really applaud some of the new things that are going on in the game about trying to make sure that people do get a game of rugby, do get half a game, etc., to try and include people. So I did all that, and then I played in the US for a couple of years, which was really, really interesting.
Where in New York was it?
Yeah, so I actually played for White Plains Rugby. So lovely side, really good bunch of lads. Remember turning up there. Just one of the training sessions, and they were like, so is this the rugby team? Like, yeah. What position do you play? Oh, prop. Oh, fantastic.
That's usually the response, isn't it? If you turn up as a prop.
And had a couple of really good seasons with those guys, really. Travelled all around again, went on tour with those guys. And that really sort of hammered home to me about how universal the game really is. And, wherever I've been, Singapore all the way to New York, is all the same, all the same nuances and the same traditions and the same sort of values still pertain, really, which is fantastic to see, really. And that brotherhood is always there. The silly drinking games are always there. All that stuff, all that really great stuff that makes rugby brilliant. Is all over the world, really. So
there must be some differences, though. What differences did you see in the game in the US?
Well, yeah, it was so obviously you can't play in the winter because it's too cold and snowy. Right. So you tend to play on AstroTurf a lot more, which is not so great on the knees. So you play in the spring and the autumn. Summer's too hot, but I was surprised how big it was in New York. Got some wonderful facilities and pitches, and some great ones in Manhattan on Chelsea Pier, where the Blues play, and New York Rugby Club as well. So they're and the competitiveness is actually quite strong. They did some really great tours up in places like Saranac, which is like the Finger Lakes, where both they have a massive male and female tour,
right?
Like a weekend away, which gets pretty wild. That's really good. And but on the whole, obviously the probably the general level of sort of competence, I suppose, is not as high as what it would be here. And, you can play what they call Premiership or Division 1, and it, obviously clearly there's not really any parallels to the level that you'd get here in the UK or in most of the leagues in Europe.
Yeah, this has come up on the pod a few times, and it seems to be that because they don't play it through high schools, that really important period of learning the game is just missing from their group ability, I guess.
Yeah, you get those massive, you get really strong athletes. Obviously, they play American football with some similarities, but the skill levels and the technique levels are not there because they haven't had the years and years of experience, really.
Yeah, for sure. So, how did you pick up all those things, starting as late as you did? I think I understand that there was quite a few people that really sort of helped you on the pitch and sort of were good in pointing you around and helping out.
No, definitely, and I think I just obviously listened a lot. I actually did read a lot as well and watched quite a few videos there were some really sort of good older guys who sort of put their arm around my shoulder really and sort of told me when I was screwing things up and also telling me when I did some good things as well. I mean, I suppose like Ben Ida was influential in the period where we had a really good two side and that he was great in telling me, as a kind of sort of pretty much a stupid forward, exactly what to do and when to do it, and just directed me around a pitch. And I thought that was really, really helpful. We ended up scoring quite a few tries, so it was, that was a great period.
I'm going to have to get Ben on the pod at some point.
Yeah,
because he gets mentioned in almost every episode, it feels, currently.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think when we had that reunion for Towner's 40th recently, and I still thought he told me he hadn't played in about 5 years, and I still thought he was one of the best players on the pitch. So.
Yeah, he usually is. Is.
Yeah, no, and a top guy as well, So yeah, that was good. And then I came back, obviously, came back from the US when that journey ended, and ended up getting. I ended up captaining the two side for a couple of seasons, and that was really good. That was because we had a decent side, and there were some really good players that were sort of on the coming through, like Delhi, who was sort of wasn't quite playing for the ones per se, but was sort of on his kind of journey through the club, and like Goody and people like that who are just really good stalwarts of the club. And even some of the sort of the older players like Lockie and Gav and again the Gardner brothers, we just had a really, really good side where we were playing some decent rugby. And did that for a little while, and then.
But what was it like being a captain when, self-admittedly, you didn't have that much experience?
Yeah, well, I suppose. I think it's also one of those thankless tasks that not many people really want to do. But I think, leadership and being a captain, I think you get different types, don't you? You get the types who are playing, who are sort of showing the way in terms of, the best player on the pitch. But there's other times about making the right decisions and the right calls and just doing the right things in the right times, which I think I was okay at doing that really. And of course, I think at amateur rugby as well, there is the element of making sure that there's a bit of organisation involved, and you've got the kit ready and the water bottles and everything's, and you've got the oppo lined up and the refs there, and all these little things that often get taken for granted because people rock up and just think a game just happens. It doesn't, particularly in amateur rugby. That definitely doesn't. There isn't those teams of people who are getting paid to do this stuff. So I think that's kind of that really helped out.
Yeah, for sure. And was there an element of you felt like you got something from the game and you wanted to kind of put something back into the club a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I've always felt that. I think I've had some absolute wonderful moments through rugby. Again, albeit never really had them as a child, but had some just great moments on and off the field that really sort of resonate and keep in my mind in terms of just being just fantastic. And I think I've got a son now who's 18, and I've had the pleasure of playing with him in a couple of senior games so far, which has been again absolutely wonderful. But it is, yeah. It's about, I think, all those times when we were playing. But it is about sort of giving back to the game, really. Which obviously I've tried to help out with the sort of the minis and the juniors and trying to do that. But obviously I also run the vets as well at the moment. So
yeah, which is another thankless task, really.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we're actually going for a bit of a purple patch at the moment, because I think we've got some good. We've actually managed this season to actually get 3 games in a row with about 20 players, which is good. And obviously we've got a big game against Blackheath on Sunday, which will be interesting.
So what have you seen over the years? That you've been involved in trying to captain and play. Have you seen the participation levels go down? And if so, what kind of reasons do you think they are for that?
I mean, I think the short answer is yes. When I first joined the club, there was arguably 5 sides, 4 senior sides and a vet side. And there have been times, if I'm being brutally honest, there have been times where we have struggled to get 2 sides out. And I think there isn't a silver bullet to solve this. There are so many different aspects and dynamics of why this is happening, and it's not just our club. There are. I hear and read that it's happening at many other clubs, and it's hard to sort of put your finger on one exact thing that's caused it. Is it because kids have got more things to do now? Are they playing too much rugby, early on, and then they get tired of it? Are the links between when they finish their A-levels and then go off to university and then come back, are they strong enough?
I agree, mate. I think there are many, many different factors that go and contribute to the game, particularly on the men's side, just the participation numbers lowering. And I'm interested at if you think of any things that clubs can do to try and mitigate that or try and turn it round in some way.
Yeah, I mean, one of the we've got a few ideas on this, but one of the trends which has just sort of just amazes me really is that and we've seen it more and more, is people not committing to games. So they might say that they're available for a game on Saturday, and then last minute deciding that actually, no, I'm not feeling too well, and I'm now going to call off or cry off and not very well. And some of these, it's done last minute, an hour before the game on a Saturday. And I just think, since when did that sort of behaviour ever become acceptable, where you can let people down at the last minute? And again, this is not something that's just completely, aimed at old Colfians. This happens all over the place. So I think that's a worrying trend. What we've tried to do is just get just a lot more closer to players. So whereby we've a lot of kind of automation systems with these where we automatically generate emails to say are you available? Click on this whether you're available or not available, and actually sort of gone back to basics and using the telephone a bit more, using newer social media things like WhatsApp, just to try and become a bit closer to the players. And also we've created a system whereby each of us each of us have responsibility for about 10 players, where we are focusing on contacting those 10 players straight away, on the Sunday or the Monday following the game, to say, look, are you ready? Are you available? And just trying to break down the tasks rather than sending out like a blanket email to 115 players, 120 players, and just hoping to see who turns up. So just trying to get just a bit more involved and just trying to build a few more bonds closer with some of the players and at different age groups as well. So.
Right, so hopefully if you get real close bonds with 1 or 2 in each kind of peer group, then that will drive the others. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, we've got one of the young lads. He's responsible for a lot of the kind of the A-level and the sixth formers boys, and making sure. So there's a bit of ownership and a bit of a sort of team within, the branch of the tree, if you like, and we've got various different senior players looking after those sort of those players who perhaps just need a bit more encouragement to actually, click available.
Yeah, and is there anything as well along the lines of? I mean, that sounds really good and a very positive thing. Is there anything as well along the lines of like club culture where you can make players feel more connected to the actual club itself as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, we try and do a lot around the social side of things, and do various different nights out where we're together, etc. We try and do a lot, but I think a lot of these kids, they've got a lot of options now, and that's not going to go away, is it? If anything, it's going to be more and more so. I think as the years go on. No, exactly, and we're really conscious of that, and we want to try and get people to stick around the club afterwards. But there's also financial pressures. We are a kind of inner city community club. Some of the young lads, they don't have, 50 quid to blow on a load of beer after the game. But, we are conscious of that. We do want to, buy a couple of jugs of beers for the boys afterwards. But, there are sort of other pressures involved that perhaps they can't stay out all night and have some fun with us, really.
Yeah, which is a shame, because I think for a lot of people, I mean, maybe it's slightly changing now, as a drip down from the professional game, but it's still a massive part of it, that teamship and going for a few beers afterwards. Yeah,
and I think there are definite, that in creating that culture, and you're right, the culture doesn't have to be, alcohol related. But, it is still a big part of trying to get people together in society in general. I mean, there are lots of, we try to sort of combine, that aspect with all doing something team based beforehand, or, do something that's involved in sport beforehand. So people do have options, but, it's difficult. It's just difficult getting people time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to go back to something, you said previously, about this idea that players are almost being burnt out of rugby before or as they get to the senior game. And there was an idea that, early specialisation was a good thing.
Yep.
And just playing one sport and being focused on that was a good thing. But more and more evidence is suggesting now that actually playing a wide range of sports for as long as possible is better in the long term.
Yeah, and I think I'd have to sort of agree with that, really, because the experience that we've seen, probably a couple of different levels. You've got the first level where, the kids are really, really good, and they are on the elite development player program, and they're off playing at Sarries, etc., etc. Where I do feel that there is there's a lot of pressure placed on those players. They are playing. They've got to play a game at school. They're probably training with their club, with the elite club, 2 or 3 times a week. There's a weight session. There's a senior game. They might even be also asked to play for Kent as well. They're looking at sort of 4 or 5 games of rugby a week, which when they get into 16, 17, and because at that level, these are, it's high impact rugby, then, it's almost, I just get the impression that, and I might be looking at it through a different light, but I just feel that those clubs have got a little bit to answer for, because it just feels like, well, it's the fittest survive. If you can get past that regime, then you might be good enough to play the good game. Where some of those players are excellent players, but it's just too much for them. And then on the slightly level below that, you get players, again, they just play too much rugby. So at a point where they get to their early 20s, they've almost kind of had enough of it.
Yeah.
Because there's just too much pressure on it, and they want to go out and they want to, have fun and get pissed and, chat up women.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do. So I think a more balanced approach and getting them, having more longevity in the game so they enjoy it more is definitely got to be the way forward.
Yeah, and I think the Premiership side and the professional game is getting better at recognising this now. But I agree, it's probably still too much.
And do you think those top clubs are embracing that? Do you think they have that? I mean, or are they thinking, okay, well, we've got this big group of people, we're just going to pick the strongest and the hardest and the ones that can that fit.
To be honest, I really don't know. I'm not close enough to it to have a solid opinion on that. They definitely spread the net wide to see as many players and get as many people into their pathways as possible, really.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you were a sponsor at Old Coffeeans as well, or
So
help with some of the sponsorship, right?
Well, if you remember, I managed to break my pelvis and my hip playing rugby pretty bad. That was in the last game of the season when I was captaining the twos. And, that made me, I mean, I had almost 3 months off work for that. It was pretty shit, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like missing sleep and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure. As much amongst other things.
Well, if you remember, Martin Daly thought I had a dead leg. That was his diagnosis, or the on-pitch diagnosis.
By Firefighter Daly.
It was a stinger. And then, I was in hospital for about a week, and then I had pins and everything put in my pelvis for about a month, and then, so it was the last game of the season, went down to club supper, fell over on my crutches, which was probably not the best thing to do. And then, but what that did do is that sort of made me be able to spend a bit more time in the back room of the club a little bit more and understand a bit more of like sort of the workings. And I've ever been since then, been on the board of directors at Coles, really just trying to, help move things forward in terms of the sort of the club and the finances and so I sponsored the club for at least I think I was the main sponsor for about five or 6 years, so which I would happily do again. I think most amateur rugby clubs really rely on that money, just for simple things like transporting the players around and coaching and all the things that balls, all the things that we take for granted, all that money, it's not just about, the subs and, but sponsorships, the key element to the equation. Yeah.
And as a sponsor, what did you want to get in return, but what was your motivation for doing that?
I think it kind of, again, goes back to what we were saying earlier about wanting to put something back into the club. I had so many wonderful memories through rugby, and I was in a position to do so at work. It suited my work, like in all these things, it was a quid pro quo.
Okay.
It enabled me as part of my sponsorship package to get some access to some of the England games, which therefore I could take clients to and further promote the club. But what the real driving factor wasn't really that. The driving factor was just trying to put something back and help the club out where I could, really.
Yeah, Colin Hannon on his podcast talked a lot about sponsors and how clubs looking after their sponsor. What would you want from club? Not necessarily, specifically Old Coffeeans, but just in general, what type of things do you think clubs can do to really make sponsors feel valuable year after year after year?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but I mean, there's the obvious things about, publicity and PR and access and, the banners and all of the sort of the branding, if you like, that you get. But I do think clubs miss out a little bit on a lot of what corporates are after now. So, you might have heard of this term, this CSR, this corporate and social responsibility. So it's a massive aspect of how companies want to behave in the wider society and what their footprint is in terms of their social responsibility. And I think that it would be good, or it would be really beneficial for clubs to be able to promote exactly like more of that stuff that they do in the community. So, for example, we do some wonderful things in the minis and the junior sections around sort of safeguarding and also promoting kids from schools that perhaps don't have the access to funds that enable them to go on tour and or actually sort of bring kids into rugby where perhaps they haven't got the parental support or they some cases the parents are non-existent, and it's not like we're kind of trying to sort of promote and sing and dance and say, look how great we are. It's just part of being a community club that we are. And I think that some of those elements would be really useful in kind of having a pact to say, look, this is the work. This is where your money gets spent. This is some of the good things that we do, because I just do think that the clubs are sometimes they keep that stuff almost secret, and I think they could promote a lot of that stuff.
Should be shared.
Yeah, I think so.
So where do these kids that you just mentioned there, where do they first get access to Old Colfians? How do you find them, or how do they find you?
Some of it's outreach stuff. I mean, there's been some great people down the club, like Dave Cheng, for example. I mean, he the All Schools programme, which was run with the RFU, where they were targeting schools that didn't really play rugby at all, and went to promote the club and what we were doing, and come down on a Sunday and have a few sessions free, etc. So there is a lot of outreach stuff that a lot of the guys do to actually promote the club and actually get the kids to do it, because if you don't do that, it's like they it's difficult for them to find out what the rugby's about.
Cool. And how are the numbers at the club at the moment in the middles and juniors?
Oh, I mean, my hat goes off to those guys. I mean, that has gone from strength to strength. When we started it was literally just one age group, and now we run, I think, under 6s all the way up to under 18s in the Colts. There's a thriving women's section as well, multiple age groups in there, I believe the numbers are close to almost about 500 kids.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, some of the sides have got 3 or 4 different sides, A side, B sides, or whatever they want to do. So yeah, it is great, and it's what's been really rewarding is actually see a number of those kids, and I remember them in the under 6s. Playing for the first team.
Yeah.
So that's really nice to see.
Yeah, that progression all the way through from day one to then play for the first 15 is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and I was talking to one of the lads, he's done really well. He's hoping to get a place at Cambridge. I mean, he was saying to me that, the Colts will always be in his kind of psyche, and he's going to go away and he'll come back, and he's likely to play at quite a high level, but always will come back, and there's a place for, he wants to come back and play for us, which is lovely.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we do have quite a relatively famous ex-product of the minis and juniors, which is Matt Gallagher, who's currently in the Saracens first team.
Yeah, and I mean, it was great to see him. There was and my boy was involved in this on Friday the 13th of December. It was actually there was a prelim to the school were playing Bradford Grammar, but it was like an old boys game before that, and Matt Gallagher came down for that and handed out some shirts to the Colfian lads.
Yeah.
So again, lovely to see. Even though he's off to the heady heights of Sarries, he still was coming back and supporting to the old boys, really, which has been lovely.
Yeah, a real core rugby value there of, remembering where you came from and, valuing that and wanting to give something back.
Well, of course, and his dad, his dad being involved as well, which is the legend that is John Gallagher, so.
Yeah, really helps.
Yeah.
Let's move on to coaching for a little bit, Bill, because you mentioned earlier that you started coaching when your boy Frank started playing, basically. What was it like for you as a young coach, starting that for the first time?
I did it all the way from under 6s all the way through to under 16s, where we've got a policy, which I think is the right one, where no dad's allowed really after, if your son's there. Time to sort of give it up a little bit under 16s, but and I did all of I think I did the rugby readies or whatever it was called then, and then the level 1s and level 2s, which are really good. But I think what really helped me, and I was just really fortunate, is because I was involved from day one. I grew up with those boys really, and also, which is a massive part of it, is I grew up with the parents as well, and just really, really fortunate that our age group was such a really lovely bunch of people. Really, I mean, and we still socialise today. All the dads went out for a pre-Christmas curry.
Right.
I know that the girls go out together as well. So that's really nice. And we've just been really fortunate. And I know that other age groups are sometimes not as fortunate as that. But you know, I was really, really keen to promote like the after coaching sort of sessions with the parents, because I thought that was equally as important. So yeah, okay, you do the, you know, often in the pissing rain on a Sunday morning, which not, you know, trying to get the kids to run around, trying to keep them warm more than anything. But, you know, sometimes afterwards and trying to keep that social aspect up, and definitely the touring as well. You know, when we first started, there was quite a few parents who didn't really, you know, they weren't from a rugby background. They didn't really understand like touring and how important that is in terms of bonding. You know, not just for the kids, but for the adults as well. So it was sometimes difficult to get them to buy into that. But once they did, and they had such a great time, they could see how much fun the kids had, and how much fun the parents had. Then that was something that we continued, and you know, that was a key part, I think, to the whole coaching setup. It wasn't just about, you know, running through the drills and you know, preparing the sessions and. You know.
Yeah, this is interesting because what you've highlighted so far is everything about interpersonal stuff, everything about clubmanship and teamship, and you've almost neglected talking about the rugby at all. And I agree. I completely agree. It's not really about the rugby. That's just why you're there. That's what you're doing. But it's those interpersonal connections that breed success. I think in rugby clubs.
I totally agree, Jimmy. And I think sometimes, again, people lose sight of this. Is like rugby is a sport, and people are there to enjoy themselves. And it goes back to everything we've been saying about the kids and trying to get them to involve. You've got to make it enjoyable. Afterwards, you know, are they going to have fun in a bar afterwards, or are they going to have more fun going up to the village and going somewhere else? You know, it's about ensuring that everyone's involved and there's that culture and everyone's having a good time, I think. You know? Otherwise, people just aren't going to turn up, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Enjoyment comes first. But in terms of the actual rugby stuff, did you have any kind of anxiety, or did you ever worry about whether you were able to do that or good enough?
No, not really. I mean, you know, I think I like to think I've always had a bit of humility. You know, I've never been the best player. I've never been the best coach, and neither will I. Never. I don't attest to be. You know, but I just. And the other thing is I always try to, and I think that humility is important, always try to get people down who are much more capable and more experienced than I were, involved in the sessions. You know, we'd get first team players involved, and but no, I never had really any anxiety about it.
The reason I ask is because I think some people do. And they worry that because they might not necessarily know everything about the game, every technical aspect ever, and have a history of coaching experience, they worry about that. And I think you're a good example of why you shouldn't, because it's all about the people, and it's all about enjoyment.
Yeah, I mean, where I kind of slightly get concerned sometimes is when I see overly eager parents. And I'm probably going to contradict myself here, but I see overly eager parents who have never played a game of rugby who think they're experts, and that worries me because, you know, it's like that. You know, they'll say, you know, that with a little bit of knowledge it can be quite dangerous. You know, I think you do have to have humility. You have to know that you're learning all the time. If people tell you there's a different way of doing things, listen. And again, you know, that it's got to be enjoyable. And if you don't know anything, ask someone. And I think, you know, they're the best coaches that I've sort of either worked with or worked alongside is you know, where you share information and it's open and you're there, you know, that didn't work out. Well, why didn't it work out? And then, you know, walk it through and do it like that, rather than this is the way it's always been done and I've read this in a book, so it must be right. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Completely agree. Cool. Well, did you? You must have done some refereeing as well during that.
No, absolutely hate it. Absolutely hate it. I've done a bit of refereeing, but I don't know. I don't like it. I find it really hard to remain unbiased. Actually,
Really?
Yeah.
Because you just want your team to do well.
I like to see a quick moving game. If there's the odd knock on here and there, who really cares? If as long as the good game's a quick game. If someone's a little bit more dominant, I like to probably give too much to the weaker side. Try and level it up a bit. Again, try and create a better game, and that doesn't bode well for a referee at all, because that's when the inconsistencies come into it, and that's a knock on, and it's not for me, refereeing at all.
Yeah, but having said that, like some of those things, ignoring knock-ons and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at the lower age groups. But
again, and we've all seen it. The overly keen referee who plays everything by the book, and as a result kills the game. What's all that about? At under 14 rugby, what is that all about?
Yeah, I guess the issue you've got is competitive parents on the sideline who might take umbrage with referee deliberately missing stuff. But
yeah, well, I must say, thankfully we don't have the problems that happen in football, for example. But I know, hearing from some of the safeguarding officers, that it is an unwelcome trend where people are still they're having to get grips of overly keen parents and shouting and contributing. But I do like to think that a lot of clubs are quite good, and a good ref should be able to say to a parent shouting, please be quiet.
Well, hopefully you as a coach, as you've kind of explained earlier, if you've got good enough relationships with all the parents, all the other parents, then that's a conversation that you should be having. And maybe it should never even come up in the first place if the ideals and the values that you believe in are being, talked about all the time.
And unfortunately that was always, it wasn't just me coaching my age group. There was, 2 or 3 other coaches, but invariably I was the one that always had to have those difficult conversations with the parents, particularly ones where, they're just, it almost kind of, the training session becomes more about the parent than the kid. And that's, again, and you can see the kid not enjoying it because dad's saying, do this, do that, get in there. That, again, that's wrong. That is not a conducive coaching environment where, the kid can express himself and do whatever he needs to do. It doesn't need dad or mum shouting at him from the sidelines, particularly over the coaching, and having those conversations where in most of the cases the parents think that they're doing the right thing, when in fact they're not really.
What in your opinion does a child need from a parent?
Just support, and and love and all the other things, and and just some support and encouragement. I think that's the key thing, and a lot of the kids that we coached, they perhaps didn't start off, some of them couldn't even catch a ball, and now they're playing for the 3s and the 2s and in the senior sides and really enjoying their rugby, and perhaps they've got a bit more physically stronger, and they're really enjoying it. So I would say, the perseverance, and keep telling them and encourage them to say that, all right, it's something that they'll learn over time, really. It's always a fine balance, isn't it? Because, we're always on the hunt for new volunteers. I'm probably sure it's the same at many other clubs. We have the same volunteers, the same people doing the same things year in, year out. And one of the things that we've highlighted is that we need just more volunteers. And that's always a struggle, because the more volunteers we have, the better management structures we can put in place, which allow people to do less things, and there's not such an onus on everyone doing too much for the club, really. So
that is a common problem, where it's always the same people doing all the work. And I've thought about this before in terms of just trying to chunk all the little tasks down, so no single task becomes too onerous for one person, and it just feels like, okay, I can do something, I'm contributing, and it's not really affecting my my working week or time with my family or whatever. I just wonder if you thought of any things like that where you can make it easier for volunteers to volunteer, basically?
I have, and we still struggle. So, I mean, if anyone's got any ideas, then please forward them on to me. But end of the day, you know, it does, and we are, as I say, we're trying to break all of the sort of the important tasks into sort of bite-sized chunks, so it does become manageable. And we've managed to get a couple more volunteers on the hook for things like sponsorship this year and stuff like that. But it's just an ongoing battle. It really is.
Yeah, I guess this is something actually that has been the case forever. Like it was the same when I first became involved in rugby, and it's the same now. I don't think that's particularly changed.
No, exactly. Just everyone just running busier, more hectic, crazy lives. I don't think it's going to get any easier anytime soon, really. But we keep trying. Yeah,
exactly. Now I know you've got a few things there that you wanted to talk about today. Have we covered everything that you wanted to get through?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I think so. We talked about all sorts of different things, really. But yeah, no, I'm good.
Cool. In that case, Bill, we'll move on to the Rugger Law Ball section of the interview.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that you hate refereeing.
Yeah, I do.
Which is very honest. Nice to hear. But how would you rate your knowledge of the laws?
Well, at what? Well, if 0 being worse, 10 being great, I'm going to say 1. Because and I would definitely say, even though I still trundle out today, and still, there are often many times when the whistle goes and I look to look to my left or my right and say, what on earth was that for? So I reckon I'm definitely not going to get this question right.
Well, I predicted your answer there.
Yeah.
And so I've given you what I think is a relatively tame question.
Good man.
And it's to do with scrummaging as well. So,
okay. All right.
So with that in mind, Bill Blythe, it's time to find out if you are a Rugger Law Ball.
Sir, are you sure that's correct?
When, according to law, does the scrum begin? You've got multiple choice here.
Okay.
Is it when the referee shouts set? Is it when the scrum half puts the ball in? Or is it when the ball is hooked?
Okay, so just going through the general process, right? So it's the ref is shouting crouch, bind, and then set. So at that point, the scrum comes together. However, the ref is always saying, be still, you can't really, and it's only until the ball comes in that I believe that you are then allowed to start pushing. So, is it, well, no, I don't think it's when the hooker comes in, but then, no, because you've got to both be able to at least engage. So when the ball comes in, I think both sides, and then it's fair game. So I'm going to go for that option there.
Well worked out, Bill Blythe. You are correct.
Get in.
Yeah, the scrum, according to law, begins when the scrum half puts the ball in.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was a pretty easy one yeah, okay.
But it does mean, Bill, I'm delighted to say, you are a Rugger Law Ball.
Get in.
Stick that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the quickfire stash questions. What is your favourite bit of stash that you've ever received?
So I will definitely have to put my hands up. So I keep all my stash really. I've got boxes of it upstairs, all the polo shirts, all of the various different kits. I think probably one of my favourite stash elements is a piece of Vets kit where we had it in the old Coalfields colours, but it was actually in a dinner jacket style.
Yes, I remember that.
And there's a black tie that's sort of like a dicky bow tie that's undone. That's pretty cool. Also, so like the Vets or the Alakadu jacket. I mean that's done some mileage, that thing.
Yeah.
And it goes about. I mean that's your go-to bit of stash if you're going out.
Yeah, we saw that in the Facebook Live before we did the interview here. So go and look at the Facebook Live video if you want to know what the blazer looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, and what is your favourite kit of all time? So this can be any team from any era. You don't need to have played for them, you know.
No, yeah. I think there's a few. I think the French have always got some pretty cool kit, and dare I say it, actually, some of the All Black stuff is it just looks decent. But I think probably my favourite one was a second team kit that we had called Fruity Good Times, which we got cheap off the internet, and it was the Hawaiian away kit of 2009, and it's awful, but it's still my favourite kit. So,
Fruity Good Times.
It's called Fruity Good Times, yeah.
Fine choice. Okay, and lastly, is there a bit of kit that you just despise? What is any current kits out there at the moment you think are awful?
Yeah. I'll tell you, the Sail Sharks kit at the moment, I think, is really dull and really boring. There's a couple actually. I think in the Premiership, I think for other reasons you wouldn't want to be wearing the Leicester kit at the moment. I mean, they're having an absolute shock, aren't they? But I think Sail Sharks probably I just think that really lacks some imagination actually.
Yeah, they have a history, in my opinion, of having quite good kits. Yeah, but I agree. This year, not so much.
No. I quite like the nod to Bath, their gold one. I think this is their away kit. It goes back to the 2005 with White Cat,
right.
And when it was still sort of the old material, not the new skin tight stuff. But that's a pretty nice kit. But Sail Shark stinks.
Yeah. Bit boring.
Yeah.
So, Bill, we're coming to the end now, and it's been a real pleasure. So, if people want to get hold of you and talk about any of the things that we've discussed today, how might they do that?
Yeah, well, I'm more than happy to share any details about how we do things at Old Coffeeins, or and just my details in general. So, probably best is my email, which is w_Blythe. That's BLYTHE @sky.com.
Nice.
And I'm always looking at that, so and I'll happily give my number out after that. So
cool. Okay, well, I'll link that up in the show notes. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure catching up and talking about all things rugby as usual.
Likewise, Jim. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
Thanks very much again to Blythe. A very enjoyable chat with some excellent nuggets of information. If you're involved in an amateur rugby club and have some tactics to keep players engaged, let's share and discuss these ideas on Twitter @AM Rugby Podcast to help raise and support all clubs. You can find out more about Old Coffeeins at ocrfc.co.uk, which, by the way, is a website I designed and built myself. If you like the look of it and think your club's site could do with a fresh new look, please get in touch. Email hello@amateurrugbypodcast.com for more information. I'd love to help out more rugby clubs. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you could rate and review on Apple Podcasts, and heck, why not subscribe while you're there too? But what I'd really like is if you mention it to someone in person the next time you're down your local rugby club. I'll be back with you next week when my guest will be Piers Mitchell. Piers was my team leader on a rugby coaching expedition to East Africa in 2017. He's on the board of directors at Darlington Moden Park and is an ex-international. His stories of playing rugby around the world will entertain and amuse in equal measures. Okay, this 3-day hike isn't going to walk itself. Time to get cracking. I hear there is a quite spectacular lake waiting at the far end. So, until next week, get out and play.